Good afternoon. I'm Christina Gabardi, Coordinator of Public Programs here at the Linda Hall Library. Thank you for joining us today for How Do I Become an Animator? This interactive program is specifically designed to give viewers the opportunity to ask questions to our professional about what it takes to become a successful animator. If you have questions for a professional, type them in the Q&A chat box you see at the bottom of your screen. If you're watching on Facebook, type them in the comments section. We are pleased to be joined today by Savannah Hamilton. Savannah Hamilton is an animator currently working at the Floyd County Productions. She is doing character animation on an FXX and Hulu TV show, Archer. She is also a freelance painter who has grown her business through original works and commissions. Savannah, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh,
I'll go
of
ahead.
course.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen now.
Yes, please do.
Okay.
I will be back for the Q&A.
Perfect. Okay. So first off, I just want to go ahead and thank the Linda Hall Library for having me. I actually used to study there in between classes occasionally when I went to the Kansas City Art Institute. So I'm super pumped to be able to pay my knowledge forward for some aspiring animators. So with this presentation, I'm hoping to provide some advice that I wish I knew in college, and then hopefully provide some guidance and tools to help you make the best decision for you and prepare you for the future. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off with my artist statement, just to give you an idea of why I love animation and why I chose it. So I'm an animator who explores the medium to communicate an idea or a message in the most effective and creative way, whether the goal is to tell a story, educate, make an impact, or even sell a product. Problem solving how to communicate that message using the endless options that animation has to offer drives me through the process. And then, like she said, I'm currently an animator at Floyd County Productions, where I've character animated for the show Archer, and also a freelance painter. And I like to add that last part because a lot of animators have other creative interests and freelance on the side. This may come in handy during hiatus and in between jobs, which can be common in the animation industry. So I would just like to normalize that it is possible to do both. All right, so here's a quick timeline of my journey so far, and I'll be elaborating on all of these as we move through the presentation. But I went to the Kansas City Art Institute 2015 to 2019. I did an internship with Trinity Animation over in Overland Park my senior year of college, about 3 months in the summer. And then after I graduated, I was a full-time freelance painter for about 6 months while I applied to jobs. And then I finally landed my first job in animation 2019 at Floyd County Productions, which brought me to Atlanta, Georgia. And that's where I became a character animator and I got to work on the show Archer. All right. Okay, so the first big question I want to touch base on is, do you have to go to college to become an animator? And the short answer is, it's not required, but it will present you with more opportunities in the animation industry. The most common degrees are Bachelor of Fine Arts, Bachelor of Arts, Master of Fine Arts. Now, there's a couple different education paths you can take. Of course, you have your brick and mortar school, just refers to a school that has a building where students regularly attend classes like the Kansas City Art Institute. Or another education route for animation is online school, which tends to be cheaper and quicker to complete, but you lack that face-to-face aspects. And it all depends on how the individual learns best, really. Personally, a 4-year school was the best option for me because I was still trying to figure out what route I wanted to take career-wise, and the brick and mortar school has a more well-rounded education versus an online school, where the online school tends to take a more specialized approach. So if you already know exactly what you want to specialize in, maybe online school would benefit you. But take my advice with a grain of salt on this. I'm just speaking from my experience. I wish I could go into more detail about the pros and cons, but ultimately just make sure you do the research so you can pick the path that works best for you. All right, so I would like to talk a little bit about my experience at KCAI, since it's likely a lot of people listening to this are from the Kansas City area. And so moving forward, I'll speak about my art education journey there, but this advice can apply to any college or education route you choose. And if you're still in high school, it's stuff to start thinking about now, because there are a few things that I wish I would have gotten a head start on. So KCAI is a 4-year program where you'll receive your Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, emphasis in animation. And the first year, you will participate in what's called Foundations, where you learn the basics of the creative process that applies to all majors. You'll be in an industrial studio space that has resources for all creative processes. You'll be challenging your preconceived ideas about art and design, develop a studio work ethic, learn constructive critique, collaborate with classmates. And then you'll also have access to the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite all 4 years. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically software that like After Effects, Photoshop, Animate, all things that you're going to be using in the animation industry. So that was super helpful. And then the last 3 years of college there, that's when you'll be studying your chosen major. And then of course, all throughout those 4 years will be sprinkled in art history, philosophy, writing classes, and more. And then real quickly, I just wanted to include some pictures of projects I did first year there, just because hearing about all the mediums you'll be participating in can be overwhelming. So like I said, you'll be dabbling in sculpting, painting, film, woodshop, photography, illustration, graphic design, animation. And for me, it really gave me an idea of what direction I wanted to take. And the skills I learned while doing a lot of these projects carried over to animation, whether it be the drawing skills, software knowledge, sculpting skills that can be carried over to claymation. So it wasn't necessarily time wasted. Now, if you already know for sure what you want to go into animation-wise, this is where maybe another education route would be beneficial to you, so you can jump right into it. Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff. So KCAI had us start out with traditional hand-drawn animation because we were also learning about the history of animation at the same time. So this is how all the original Disney movies were animated, such as Snow White, Bambi, Fantasia. So we started out on what's called a light table, that top picture there. And it's basically just a piece of translucent glass or plastic with a light behind it. And it's used for drawing and viewing your transparencies. So you can stack your papers and see all of your drawings underneath while you're animating. Then you take those finished drawings over to a down shooter, which is that bottom picture I've included there. And the down shooter is just basically a camera aimed downward to easily take pictures of each drawing. And then once you do that, the pictures are imported into a program, so you can watch your animation at 24 frames per second or whatever you choose. So that normally equals like 12 drawings per second, 720 drawings per minute. So you can kind of get an idea of how much work was involved in this method and how time consuming it is. Is this the best way to learn? Not necessarily. Obviously, the majority of jobs in animation will now be done digitally because it's immensely quicker and convenient since you're removing all the physicality of it. But I did find it beneficial when learning some of the steps since everything was tangible. And I also just thought it was fun to experience animation, how animation began. If you want to animate like this at home, there are light boards that you can order on Amazon about the size of an iPad. It's the same concept. You can see your transparencies through the paper as you animate. Then you can easily rig up your iPhone to make like a makeshift down shooter. I'll have a slide later on with the resources for materials like that. But like I said, of course, you could start with digital too, and I'll talk more details about digital here in a few slides. Okay, so I won't elaborate on all of these, but the first thing you should become familiar with are the basic principles of animation. So these are important because all 12 of these skills help ground the animation and give the illusion that the object abides to basic laws of physics. So I would suggest learning and mastering these first. So watch some YouTube videos, read some books, whatever you need to do to get started. And now I'm going to jump into how to practice these skills. Okay, so I know you might be eager to jump into like exciting and complex animation right away, but you really need to start simple. So these two examples are the most common exercises for beginners that every higher education will make you do. And that's because it teaches the basics of weight, spacing, and timing. So on the left, I have diagrams displaying all of the drawings in the animation. And then on the right, I have the animation. So for the pendulum, as you can see in the middle of the swing, the drawings are more spaced out because it's moving quicker versus the end of the swing where the drawings are closer together, which gives the effect that that momentum of the ball is slowing down. Same thing with the bouncing ball. It's all about getting that feel for the spacing and timing. Then you can experiment with things like adding a little squished ball on the impact point. For example, the bottom circle on that diagram labeled N, it gives the illusion that there is an impact when hitting the ground. So the drawing may only be for a split second, but it adds that weight. So like I said, it's all about experimenting and getting a sense of how many drawings it takes to convey that timing and weight. And then once you master basic skills like that, you can jump into more complex exercises. These are a couple of my animations that I did starting out, so don't judge them too hard. Also, they're GIFs, so they're probably not playing at the right frame rate, but it's fine, you get it. On the left, I have a piece of paper falling because I wanted to practice animating something lightweight. And you can see how that pendulum practice came in handy with that back and forth motion. And then on the right, I have a water droplet rolling off of a leaf, creating this heavy droop, and then it falls and the leaf spring backs up, and then the droplet splashes into the water. So for both of these, I used reference footage that I either recorded myself or I looked up online. So just studying video footage of what these actually look like in real life is also essential when animating. Also, share your work with others and let them critique, because we all become biased to our own work. So getting a little bit of that outside feedback will be helpful. Okay, and then I wanted to go over a few more common exercises for beginners. We animated elements like fire, water, and smoke, objects falling. You want to have a variety of different weights like a brick, feather, flour sack. Characterize an inanimate object. A really popular one for that would be a flour sack waving or jumping. And this helps you learn the weight mechanics without worrying about all the extra stuffs on a character like limbs. So it just simplifies it a little bit. And these are getting a little bit difficult as I go down the list. Or a walk cycle is a really great example, just a character walking across the screen, a character lifting something heavy, character changing emotion, and then maybe you want to do emotional walk cycles. So a sad walk, sneaky walk, happy, mad. And then of course you can play around with lip sync, and then which is basically just timing up a mouth to an audio sound. And then overlap. So floppy ears, tail, tie, you know, how do those sorts of things react when a character is moving side to side or jumping up and down? All right. Okay, so here's a really great book recommendation that I used all through college. It's called The Animator Survival Kit by Richard Williams. And if you're in high school, I highly recommend purchasing it now just to get a bit of a head start. There's some really great information and diagrams like this one that I've included of a walk cycle, and it will have everything you need to get started. All right. Okay, so here's some more student work of mine. I absolutely cringe at it now, but hey, you have to start somewhere. And I wanted to show you guys this because I wanted you to see what it truly looks like at a beginner stage, because you're going to create some crappy animation along the way. That's just part of it. And school is the time to dive in and make those mistakes and fail. So on the left, I have a little walk cycle. He's a little safari guy attempting to do a sneaky walk. And then on the right was my attempt to do a four-legged giraffe. So these are both my sophomore year of college. Okay, and then here are a couple more examples. We got some mystery liquid bubbling up. That's a great exercise for practice. And then on the right is just a clip from an abstract animation that I did, which is also really helpful when learning timing, spacing, and just getting it to look the way I wanted it to look. Okay, and then another great method to start with is stop motion animation. So this involves photographing and physically manipulating objects within your frame, which creates that effect that the object is moving by itself. So maybe you want to try claymation like the movie Coraline or Wallace and Gromit, or maybe you want to do cutout animation like the show South Park started out as, and they started as simple as construction paper. Or there's also methods like pixelation, which is using physical people as a frame-by-frame subject. You can really use anything you want with this method. For example, I started as simple as a yarn. So this was a really fun project where I characterized an inanimate object. Each little end of yarn moved around and had its own little personality, and they interacted with each other, which ended up being a cute little love story. So have fun, experiment, and start simple like this. And you could easily do this at home with your iPhone or a basic camera to start out. All right, so now we're getting into digital animation, which personally was the most exciting for me. I felt like there were so many different methods and opportunities within digital animation, and it was all new to me in college. So I just remember being so eager to jump in. So I'll go over a few different methods. First off, we have 2D hand-drawn, which is similar to hand-drawn, like on the light table that I showed you earlier, except this time it's on a computer or a Cintiq, which is displayed in that top left picture. So instead of pen to paper, it's pen to screen. It's most similar to traditional, but it takes away all the physical effort. And I don't know about you guys, but I am so happy that I will exist in the 21st century, because all the amazing technology, I think, makes animation so much more fun and has provided so many more options. It's still very time consuming and tedious, obviously, but taking out all that physical effort of taking pictures of every single drawing is so much better. Oh, and then also I wanted to mention that software is advanced enough to provide many different textured brushes to give whatever effect that you want. Another really popular one is 2D puppet animation. So that's basically it consists of pre-drawn illustrations or shapes that are made into a character. The show that I worked on, Archer, uses this method a little bit. So for example, that little yellow guy in the bottom right-hand corner that I've put in the slide, he's made out of shapes that are rigged, meaning the body parts are attached where they're supposed to go. So the arms to the shoulders, the forearms to the arms, the hands to the forearms, and so on. And the rotation points are set. So it creates this sort of system so you can easily manipulate and animate him. And this is a really popular strategy in TV animation because it's a little bit quicker of a process, since it doesn't require drawing every single frame. And it can be really fun and effective. And then, of course, we have motion graphics, which an example of that would be that red GIF that I've included. And this usually consists of logos, shapes, text, and a lot of commercials or businesses that want their logo animated. And then, of course, we have 3D animation, which is what you see the most of in animation today when it comes to feature films or video games. And you can learn to build and rig those 3D models as well. So I suggest dabbling in a little bit of everything so you're well-rounded and flexible. And you can combine several of these in one project. For instance, these are 4 separate shots of some of my favorite moments from a short film I did my junior year of college. It uses 2D puppet animation, motion graphics, 2D hand-drawn, and a little bit of 3D. So you can see the combination of all these methods. And at KCAI, we had the opportunity to produce a couple independent short films on our own. And this one ended up being about 2 minutes long, an informative video about climate change that I did. And I believe we had 4 months to complete it. And then I wanted to include another example. This time I had 9 months to do this, and it ended up being about 6 months. So this was my senior year of college. And this one, I took the all 2D digital hand-drawn animation route. Ended up being a little Western narrative. And I'll include my website at the end so you can view these if you want. But for these independent films that I had a chance to work on as a student, I learned a lot because I was in charge of all aspects. So writing the script, storyboarding, getting voice actors, recording audio, sound effects, the animation, editing. And it can be really beneficial because you quickly learn where your strengths lie and what you enjoy doing most. So I just wanted to show you those to give you more examples of what digital animation can look like as a student, and also keep in mind that freelancing and making independent animations is a route that you can go where you will wear several different hats and be in charge of all aspects. And then I wanted to show a couple examples of my 3D projects as a beginner. These are just basic models that I built to practice different walk cycles. Again, I started simple with every method I tried. I even started out with that basic pendulum and ball bounce in 3D first before jumping into this. Okay, now let's talk about software. So this was one of the most intimidating things for me because I had no experience with animation software until college. But rest assured, even the most non-tech savvy people can learn. I will say, when it comes to software, try to be flexible and adaptive because it's likely your job will require you to switch software based on what you're working on. They all are pretty similar once you know their terms and tools, but the layouts are different, and there are quite a bit differences when it comes to navigating it. So if I'm being honest, YouTube and Google are your best friends when learning software. There are so many tutorials, articles, and question forums online that will help you out, and I still Google stuff about software while I'm working in the industry today, so it's a constant process. But I put together a short list of common ones that are great for beginners, and I think you should try multiple starting out. Now, a lot of these will cost monthly subscriptions, but they will usually have a free month trial, and there are some free ones available that I noted below. And I put some of my favorites in bold. So under the Adobe Creative Cloud, After Effects, that's mainly for motion graphics and 2D puppet animation. And then moving over to Animate, that will offer you more of a traditional 2D digital hand-drawn style. And then Toon Boom Harmony, that will give you a little bit of everything. So you can do 2D puppet animation or hand-drawn. And then also something that's really important is what tools do you need to animate when it comes to digital? So I wanted to provide a few different options that you can purchase to animate from home. The first one I've included, top left, is an example of that light board like I was talking about earlier. So if you want to experiment with traditional hand-drawn animation, that's a good route to go. Or if you want to practice digitally, the cheapest option would be a Wacom tablet, like the bottom left, or a little bit of a better option would be a Cintiq. Now, they can be a little bit of an investment, but I would say the top right one would be a nice happy medium to start with. It's a smaller Cintiq that you plug into your computer and it displays your computer screen and then you can draw on it. Okay, and then I want you all to keep in mind that, again, working in animation doesn't necessarily mean becoming an animator. There is a whole pipeline, and pipeline is an industry term for how the steps of production are organized. So the work is divided up, and then within that pipeline, you can be a storyboarder or a character designer, or maybe you want to be a background artist, a layout artist. You could be an animation director or a compositor, a screenwriter. So tons of different options. So keep your mind open because you might be surprised about what else interests you. I know I was. And it is possible to jump around a bit in the animation industry. Okay, so now this is probably one of the most important slides. What do you need to apply to jobs? Your animation demo reel is going to be one of the most important things when applying, and it is 60 to 90 seconds of your work. Basically, it's a collection of your best work that you will continue to update over time as you complete more animation. And I'll include my Vimeo and YouTube info at the end, so you can go see all of my old ones and how I progress. And I recommend surfing Vimeo and YouTube demo reels just to see what other animators do, especially ones that inspire you. And then, of course, you might include a portfolio, which can consist of any other skill sets you choose to include, like character design, storyboards, sketches, it may be 3D models, whatever you think would be right for the job. And then, of course, we got a resume, cover letter, maybe some referrals. And then most professionals have a website. This is great just to have everything in one place. So mine has my demo reel, my full-length short films, my paintings, my resume, and really good ones to start out with are WordPress, Squarespace, and Wix. They're all super intuitive and they kind of guide you through the process, even if it's really a basic layout. And then most companies will require you to participate in an animation test. So they will send you a shot to animate with directions and a time frame to complete it by. Then they will usually give you notes to make it better, and then they'll decide whether or not they want to hire you. And I took several animation tests for companies before I finally got hired. So don't let that discourage you if you don't get the job. That's completely normal. All you can do is take the feedback and apply it moving forward. And then some tips that I had in mind is have the willingness to relocate. I wanted to include that because the animation industry does have hubs, one being in Atlanta, Georgia, where I am. Now, there are a lot of jobs in bigger cities and on the West Coast, like California. So there's a strong chance relocating might have more opportunities for you. It is improving a little bit since working from home has become more common, but most places still require you to be in the same state. Either way, it is just something to consider. You don't necessarily need to relocate before getting the job. You can apply from where you are now, and a lot of places will compensate you to help you move when you do get the job. Okay, and then expect 6 months to 2 years to break into the industry. It can be hard to break into the industry. Unfortunately, this is a reality with a lot of careers. After I graduated, I was applying to places daily. Diligence is key when it comes to this, because sometimes it is about timing. So you've got to stay consistent. And, you may only hear back from a few places out of the 50 that you applied to, but the more you apply, the more chances you're giving yourself. Okay, and then internships. So internships can be tricky because you're not always doing what you want. For instance, the first animation studio I worked at, I was a receptionist and I wrote articles for their website. But I had a mentor that assigned me projects and exercises for me to participate in. So that internship was at Trinity Animation, which is in Overland Park. And they do hyper-realistic 3D animation for a number of things, such as product ads, medical animations, architectural renders, like a bunch of really cool stuff. And they also built they created 3D builds of some of the backgrounds for the show Archer, which is the show I later character animated for. So although I only worked there for 4 months, my senior year of college during the summer, it was a great addition to my resume when I didn't have any experience. And that studio name was familiar to the studio I later applied for. So long story short, you never know what doors can be opened from internship opportunities in the long run. And then another thing is mentorships. So senior year of college, we were required to find mentors that were actively working in the animation industry to give us feedback on our senior films and help teach us about the industry in general. And this was really helpful for me. I actually found a Pixar animator that was willing to be my mentor by just messaging him on LinkedIn. Now, I will say I messaged about 50 people before I finally found one that was willing to commit and be a mentor. But use your resources and put yourself out there and network, because it will potentially pay off. All right. Okay, so now I finally get to talk a little bit about my time on Archer. So like I said, I character animated for 3 seasons. It was seasons 11 through 13. Now, I did sign an NDA, but I will give you a brief rundown on my job and a little bit about what happens, but I can't go into too much detail. Okay, so it's an adult cartoon on FXX. It's a combination of 2D and 3D animation. And the 2D animation is that 2D puppet character animation, like I was talking about earlier. So the company is divided up into departments, and the show goes through their pipeline process, like I mentioned earlier. So once the scripts are written, the voice actors are recorded, the storyboard is drawn, the characters are designed, then there's what's called the illustration department. And the illustration department draws the characters and the assets and the backgrounds. And then the animation department, which is what I'm in, rigs the characters, and they are assigned scenes to animate. And then each episode goes through rounds of review for noting, and the animators adjust the shots accordingly. So we get individual shots to animate, maybe 30 seconds to a minute at a time. And it takes us anywhere from 3 days to a week to complete, depending on the difficulty. And then there's a separate team called the composition team that adds special effects like explosion and weather and everything. And then there is also a 3D animation department for certain assets as well. So I really enjoy it. It's a great balance of like cartoony but realistic. And there's some really fun action scenes that I get to animate. And every year in the animation industry, I feel like I'm still improving and getting better. So keep that in mind. It's okay to continue to learn while you're in the industry. That's all part of the process that everyone goes through. And then I would like to leave you guys with some final advice that can be applied while you're in college or when you're a professional. So keep in mind that it's a collaborative process that requires a team player. When you're in school, don't burn any bridges, get along with everyone, because the industry is surprisingly small, and you never know who you're going to end up working with later on, or you never know who's going to be your boss later on. Next one is don't shy away from technical shots or difficult shots. You know, like I said, school is the time to make those mistakes and dive in. Same when you're a professional, that's how you're going to get better. And then, yeah, you don't have to be good at drawing to animate necessarily. So like working on Archer, I don't do any drawing. I'm just animating the pre-drawn characters. I'm manipulating them and moving them. So there are plenty of methods that don't require drawing at all, such as digital, stop motion, and 3D. However, it doesn't hurt to have that skill set, and it might provide a wider range of options for you. So just keep that in mind moving forward. And if you want to get better at drawing, I would consider practice your figure drawing. And then, yeah, share your work. Sharing your work with fellow classmates and coworkers is part of the process. So be open to critique and taking notes, because in the industry, it's required to make those changes to your work in order to complete the final version of what the producer is going for. And then another question I wanted to throw in there is, ask yourself, what does hiatus look like? A lot of jobs in this industry may have gaps. So if you're working on a TV show, there may be gaps between seasons that you won't be working. Or after a movie is done, you may have hiatus before your next job. I just like to bring this to your attention early on so you're prepared. Sometimes that means having a little more of a financial cushion saved up during those times, or maybe you have a really awesome freelance job that comes in handy. But it's all worth thinking about now. Okay, and then on this last slide, I've included my social media that you can follow me on. Vimeo is where you can find a lot of my student work and demo reels over the years, if you want to get a sense of what those look like. And then YouTube has my most recent demo reel. It'll probably be where I post more stuff moving forward. And then I've included my website, which pretty much has it all in one place. And then lastly, I provided a really great podcast that I learned a lot from. It's hosted by several professional animators, and I believe they work at DreamWorks. Either way, they all worked on feature films, and they go into so much more detail that I wish I could have provided today. And then that's the book recommendation that I mentioned earlier. I wanted to go ahead and include it again just in case. And then the last one is a couple online resources if you want to improve your figure drawing skills. Me and my classmates use this a lot through college. But yeah, on that note, I'll wrap it up, and I think I'm open to take questions.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that awesome presentation and for giving all of the viewers these resources.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
might leave it up for a few minutes just so they can
leave it up for a few minutes so people can actually see that. Yeah, as a reminder, if you have a question, type it in the Q&A section you see at the bottom of your screen. If you're viewing on Facebook, type it in the comments section. One of the first things I was thinking of whenever I was watching the presentation is foundation year, you're tossed a lot of a buffet of different activities and materials. When did you decide that you were actually gonna go and commit to animation as a major?
Yeah, so one of the projects my professor wanted us to do was we had to record a sound and then create a piece of art using whatever medium we wanted to portray this sound through the artwork. And I recorded keyboard typing. And I remember like having this visual in my head of these like shapes popping up. Like I had this whole idea of what I wanted to do as a digital animation to portray this sound, but I had never touched any of the software or dove into it. So my professor said, Savannah, go for it. You know, like, it doesn't matter if you don't know, like, now is the time to learn. And I remember that project sort of changed everything. It was so simple, right? It was just shapes popping up on the screen that was timed to this audio. But it kind of opened my world up and made me realize that I could learn those softwares and it wasn't so far out of reach. And then from then on, I just kind of took that route into the animation career mindset.
That is really cool. Yeah, I would say it's good to not be too intimidated by, things you're not familiar with. When it comes to art and technical, it feels like there might be a divide there, but it's good to just get your hands on it and give it a try and see what you think. We're
Mhm.
getting some questions now. So one of the questions is, are there internships available for high school students?
Yes. So the internship I had, for high school students.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I know there are for college students. If I were in your position, I would, it doesn't hurt to reach out to places that you want to apply to and let them know, like, this is the path that I want to take. This is the career choice that I'm looking for. Is there any way I could help out at this company? Because I say shoot your shot and try to get your foot in the door early on. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but it is a possibility. So I would say give it a try.
Yeah, I would say if you're motivated, you should really look into that. It's always better to get a head start. We have another question. Do you work primarily with a team of animators, or are you mostly working independently on your portion?
Mhm. So you will be a part of a team of animators, and we meet every day and talk. So we stay connected. But once you're given your shot to work on, you're then independently working just on your shot. Now, you may have to communicate with the animator that has the shot before you and after you, just to make sure the continuity is working and everything. So there is that constant communication and team aspect because you're all working together to make one final product. But when you get your chunk, you are kind of diving in and just kind of on your own in your own space for a little bit. So it's a good balance.
Right, good to be flexible in that case.
Mhm.
Uh, we have a question. What is the best way or method to get freelance work? Also, are there any good freelance platforms online?
Yeah, I know now I don't have a lot of freelance experience when it comes to animation, but there are a lot of apps and websites that you can sign up for to get that through. The one I'm thinking of, I'm blanking right now. I think it starts with an F, Fiverr or something along the lines of that. And so I would recommend starting there when it comes to getting those freelance jobs in the animation industry, those apps.
Okay. And yeah, I would also assume just making yourself very present online. You've done very well to hit a lot of those social media platforms and have your work just out there. So I think just being very present is important. Um, so you've relocated for your current position. What does that typical workday look like? Is it a hybrid situation? Are you ever working from home? Are you mostly in a studio situation?
Mm-hmm. So when I got the job, it was October 2019, and we were all in studio at the time. And then, of course, COVID happened in March 2020. And ever since then, we've been shifted to working from home full time. And they offer the hybrid situation. You can, which most animation studios do right now. It's like you have that option to work from home or come in some days. Um, so yeah, in this industry, personally, I love being able to work from home because you have that work-life balance. You don't have to commute every single day. Yeah, it's a lot of working from home. So if you're into that, it's definitely a good option for you.
Okay. And at this point, would it be possible for us to stop sharing screen so I could
Mhm.
get you closer to
Yes,
me? Okay, that's
perfect.
awesome. Thank you. It looks like we have a question from Facebook. Are there any resources you can use on a mobile device? I am looking to sketch on my iPhone as I mosey around. So do you know if there's anything useful resource-wise with phones?
Scheduling as in for
Oh, I
like,
think, is it sketching? Oh, sketching on an iPhone.
oh, I don't know about the iPhone, but if you have an iPad, Procreate would be the best option. And it's a one-time fee of, I think like 10 or $15. I don't, and maybe Procreate would be available on the iPhone. But yeah, that's all I know on that topic. Sorry, I'm not more helpful on that.
Oh, no, it's all good. And a more general question, what would you say is the most difficult part or challenging part about having animation as a career?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay. The most difficult part. I would say, so this can be like a pro and a con, but one of the most difficult things is there a lot of the animation jobs are contract jobs. So at the end of a season, you're sort of like waiting to hear whether or not it's renewed to see if you have a job next. Same with like, movies. When the movie is over, is the company going to rehire you? So as far as job security, usually companies are really good about keeping you and trying to bring you on to other projects. And I've had good experience with that in the animation industry, but they can't guarantee you that a show is going to get renewed or that you will have work. So there is sort of this constant, up in the air feeling of, am I going to have a job next? And how long is hiatus going to be? But you kind of have to embrace that uncertainty. It can be exciting because you will get to, move on to another project, doing a little bit of a different technique, and it can be fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up for people who may not be aware so they could at least go in there understanding what the landscape is going to be like.
Right.
Yeah, so we've got another question. Do you have any tips on selecting a college program? What do you look out for? What do you look for?
Um, so I mean, when it comes to, okay, so like the Kansas City Art Institute is your considered a private school. It's a little bit more money. You'll have that first year, like I said. I would say look at the financial situation, how much it's going to cost, weigh those options, but also, like I said earlier, if you know specifically what you want to do in animation, you could take a different route where you'll be jumping straight into those animation classes instead of going through foundations where you'll be like dabbling in all majors. So I would say when you're doing your research, really research what you'll be doing year to year and what classes they'll be putting you through and how many years it takes to complete and those sorts of things.
Yeah, that will be probably really solely driven on the individual, so look out
Yeah.
for your own needs. So besides the one you work on, what's your favorite animated show or film? Is there one that stands out for its amazing animation?
I really loved Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it. That's a really cool one to check out. I think every episode is a different style of animation and a different story. I think it'd be so fun to work on one day too. So yeah, I'm into a lot of the adult animation stuff, and I really like how the industry is sort of expanding in that way, because I think for a long time animation was looked as just for little kids to view, and now it's become this medium that adults can watch too, and it can have different subject matter.
Yeah, I feel like that type of attitude has changed within my lifetime. You know, you really see people taking it to whatever extremes they want to. So it's really up to you. We've got another question. How important are soft skills like public speaking and writing in your job? You're a great speaker. How do you develop those skills?
I would say it just takes practice. Just practice whenever you're meeting up with your animation team and being open to bonding and talking and making friends and networking. It's they aren't the soft skills aren't super important if I'm being honest. I mean, obviously you need to be able to communicate clearly and you know, talk to your bosses and communicate like about notes on your animation. But as far as public speaking, you won't be doing a whole lot of that. And what really matters is like how well you are at your job. And then what was the other thing you mentioned? Public speaking and or something
Um,
else like that.
the soft skills, public speaking and writing, so developing speaking and writing skills.
Yeah. So, and then same with writing. As long as you can, as long as you have those basic skills, you don't have to be extravagant about it or like super well. I would say to just focus on getting really good at animating or storyboarding or whatever route, creative route that you want to choose. Those are the most important.
Okay. And so how do you strike a balance between your job in animating and then your passion or your freelance art, your painting? How do you find a balance there?
Yeah, so I'm actually still working that out a little bit. But I tend to do a lot of my painting stuff in the evenings or on the weekends. And then of course, like usually my hiatus is about 3 months long. So that's when I'll dive in and start, you know, freelance painting full time. And I've been trying to develop, you know, prints of those paintings and have an online shop that can like last me in the long run. Um, but it is tricky because after working 40 hours a week at my animation job, I might be a little bit creatively burnt out. So it's all about figuring out what works for you, because obviously you don't want to like work yourself to the point of complete burnout. So those freelance positions can sort of be a give and take based on my when my animation career is full-time versus when I'm in hiatus.
Sounds like you have to be super flexible to keep all of the candles burning.
Yes, you got to be flexible, adaptive, and like not too hard on yourself at the same time. I'm guilty of it.
Yeah, totally. I totally understand that. And how do you manage deadlines? Because I assume within your field, you're being hit with a lot of deadlines and time management issues. Any tips for that?
I would say be really organized. I'm sort of already like that by nature, so it comes easy to me. But you know, as the more you work, the more you'll get an idea of how long it takes you to complete something. And normally your deadlines will be manageable. So the deadline that your boss gives you, if you think that you're not going to hit that, or even if like a professor gives you a deadline and you feel like you're not going to hit that, uh, communicate that. I think going up and like letting them know that you need more time, or say like, hey, here's where I'm at, can I get that, you know, like don't be afraid to ask for help or guidance in any way. And that's just going to come with practice, doing that over and over. And then sometimes deadlines will be really tight. And in those instances, they may offer you some overtime on the weekend, you know, especially during crunch time towards the end of the season. There is a little bit of a rush there at the end, that'll just be part of your job in the animation industry.
I see. Yes, I think communicating at all times will help keep everybody on the same page. Um, and since we're coming up close to the hour, we'll probably end with a question. So, out of all of the projects you've worked on, what is a project that you found the most exciting?
Out of all the projects I worked on, I mean, it's to this day, it's got to be Archer. Archer is one of the projects that I'm most proud of. I still can't believe sometimes that I was able to animate for that show. So yeah, I think that's what I'm most proud of. And I've improved the most. You know, I think I'm most proud of that work that I've done as of today, just because, you know, it's taken so much time to get to that point.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can only assume it's a very competitive field, but very exciting and gratifying when you're able to actually see your work come to life. Um,
Yes.
yeah, thank you so much for your time, Savannah. Thank you for the amazing presentation. It was an amazing resource. And thank you for answering everyone's questions as well.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem. Thank you. Really happy
yeah,
to do it.
yes, appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in today. For more information for all of the library's upcoming events, follow us on our social media and visit our website, lindahall.org, where I also encourage you to sign up for our e-newsletter. And for the parents and teachers tuning in today, I hope that you consider supporting the library through the Linda Hall Library Foundation. All of your contributions make our programs possible and freely available. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
See ya.
Bye.